Good evening, everyone. I am Munir Bahar, the nonprofit warrior, executive director of Core Health Institute and principal consulting for Core Consulting LLC, based out of Baltimore, Maryland. Here we are, 2020. We are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects on the economy as it is challenging small businesses everywhere. So we are detailing or trying to provide as much guidance and clarity as possible and understanding what is the pathway forward for small businesses as we move through this pandemic and after this pandemic. How do we navigate forward? What opportunities are available for us? What mindset do we need to embrace to move ourselves forward? So I want to continue off of, we did a video yesterday about the funding programs. Today, I want to speak with a government relations expert, Therese Hessler, who is the president and CEO of Ashlar Government Relations and Consulting. And they specialize in every aspect of government affairs consulting for small businesses and nonprofit businesses. So I want to bring her in to help us get clarity about the CARES Act, COVID-19, and really everything going on and how we mobilize ourselves and communicate to our elected officials. So without further ado, good evening.
Good evening.
Glad to have you and glad that you are participating in this forum to help guide small businesses and give us clarity, insight, encouragement, and really help us to understand what's happening in the country, and you know, all these political conversations that are happening and going on. And I can speak for myself as a small business owner. I don't understand everything. I'm trying to find out everything. I mean, I'm trying to keep my business afloat. I'm trying to survive. I have to understand how my customers are reacting, but more importantly, we're trying to understand what's happening with our local, state, and federal government.
And I'm certainly honored to be here and really looking forward to kind of breaking this down for everyone because I'm also a small business owner. So the second that COVID-19 hit and we started to notice an economic recession begin to occur, it really became concerning, I think, not just for myself, but a lot of my peers and colleagues as well. So I'm really honored to be here and I'm looking forward to talking with you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. So, and I have some questions that I feel are probably on the minds of a lot of small business owners across the country. And when we talk about, just to be clarity for the audience, when we say small business, we are, I don't want to say exclusively focusing on, but we aren't leaving out what myself and many other small businesses believe to be a large portion of the small business community, which is representing about 25 million of the 30.2 million businesses in America. 25 million of those businesses are small business and are classified as non-employer firms, meaning these small businesses are your solo operators. I mean, these are your accountants, your insurance providers, your website providers, graphic designers, dentists, doctors. I mean, so many professions where people operate as independent businesses. They don't get W-2s. It's 1099 or other forms of compensation. But this is a large pool of a large community within the small business community. So we want to understand how the CARES Act, how this COVID-19 pandemic is affecting this large pool of small businesses, because we know the larger businesses are being addressed. But to start us from the beginning, maybe if you can just tell us, for those who don't know, what is this CARES Act that we hear about?
Sure. So on March 27th, President Trump signed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, into law. What it is, it's a $2 trillion package. It's aimed at combating the economic damage from the coronavirus crisis. So unlike the stimulus relief given in 2009, the CARES Act is not trying to boost aggregate demand. Obviously, many states are at stay-at-home orders right now, so it is not driven to boost the economy. What it's about, it's trying to put a floor underneath people and to make sure that businesses can stay afloat so that they don't have to lay off as many people as they currently are. Therefore, helping affected individuals continue to meet their obligations such as rent, mortgage, and other financial obligations.
So is the CARES Act, is this focused on businesses with employees? You know, if I'm a small business and I don't have employees, I mean, am I in there? Am I included in this stimulus package?
So yes and no. The way this CARES Act is really set up, it is targeted at the larger businesses, and they're defining a small business as a company that has under 500 employees. So really looking into the granular, there's different provisions that provide relief for small businesses, but not necessarily your independent contractor or your non-employee firm, which many, like you mentioned, many of them are. And I'll just talk through some of the provisions within the CARES Act for small businesses, because there are some of them, depending on where you qualify on a financial scale, even if you are a LLC or sole proprietor or a contractor, you might be able to qualify for, even though that is not the mass target of this legislation. So the first major provision that's being discussed is the loans to small businesses. Again, it's getting at the idea of relief as fast as possible. There's two major programs in the CARES Act that are really being mentioned and are relevant to small businesses. And the first is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as the EIDL. And that now includes emergency disaster grants and the new Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. PPPs are loans provided through the Small Business Administration, also known as the SBA. Any small business can apply for both loans, but you can't use the money for the same expenses. So as I mentioned earlier, small businesses are defined as those with 500 employees or less, but there is this niche of us that is not. So when you're really looking at these two programs, they're going to heavily rely on the financials and what you can submit. So under this new act, a small business under these two programs does include some sort of individuals who operate as independent contractors, sole proprietors, with or without employees, and self-employed persons. There's a couple caveats to that. You have to have made over $100,000 in your last financial accruals. You have to have been operational as of January 31st for the PPPs and February 15th for the EIDLs. And so that kind of creates a little bit of gray area for some businesses that might not qualify for that.
Yeah, I think that's the frustration. You know, where if I'm a small business, where do I go to get more clarity? I guess online. You know, what websites, federal government, where do I go?
So the federal government has promised, and they included this within the CARES Act as one of the stipulations, that they are going to increase their resources online for these small businesses on the SBA website. So that's just SBA, if you search for it online. And they will have all the links, and specifically under all the links of the different programs, what pieces of information you need to qualify and how to apply.
So first and foremost, as a small business owner, if I'm trying to find out about these programs, I need to go to sba.gov.
Correct.
And learn about the individual programs and see what I can apply for.
Yes, and I will say that eligible businesses can apply for a low interest EIDL of up to $2 million, which can be used to cover any expenses that would have been paid had the pandemic not occurred, like payroll, debts, rent, mortgage payments, but these loans must be paid back. It also creates a $10 billion total fund for emergency disaster grants, which do not have to be repaid as long as you use the money for the mentioned specified expenses. So when applying for an EIDL, you can check a box to request an advance of up to $10,000 to cover immediate payroll, mortgage, rent, debt, and other operating expenses while waiting for the additional relief to come through. These grants should be available until December 31st, and the payments should come quickly as the Act requires the SBA to disperse the money within 3 days of verifying the business's or individual's eligibility.
Okay, and I just went to SBA.gov, and I mean, right on the home page, you can't miss it. Coronavirus, COVID-19, small business guidance and loan resources. Learn more. So it's pretty, set and clear for anyone that would go to the website. Now, so my next question, and maybe you've answered it in some form, but this money that Congress, the federal government is I don't want to say giving out, but making available to small businesses, is how does it trickle down? Are things just addressed at the federal level, or are there things at the state level? Are there things at the local level? How does it trickle down for your average small business person? Or do we have to go through SBA? Yeah, if you could answer
So you
that.
don't actually have to go through SBA. It depends on the type of relief that you're looking for. So the EIDLs go directly through the SBA and are paid out directly by the SBA. However, under the PPPs, you have to go to a bank and apply for a loan. So this is an entirely new type of loan, and the same businesses that I previously mentioned are eligible as long as they've been operational since February 15th. So this does include the independent contractors and so forth. It's a zero interest or low interest, zero fee loan of up to $10 million used to cover costs on mortgage, rent, utilities, interest on debt, payroll costs, employee benefits, and healthcare, as well as annual leave. Repayment is currently deferred for at least 6 months and up to 1 year, and these loans are available until June 30th. Because the PPP is meant to incentivize businesses to keep employees on the payroll, the SBA will only forgive the loans, meaning you don't have to pay it back, if all the employees are kept on the payroll for at least 8 weeks after the loan is given, and if at least 75% of the loan is used for payroll costs, which is a hard burden as well, depending on where people's overhead stands. However, if you lose any full-time employees or if salaries or wages decrease, forgiveness will be reduced. So unless you're able to restore full-time employment and salaries by June 30th, you're going to be hit with some fees here. Self-employed workers and independent contractors, along with the sole proprietors and part-time workers, are also eligible for state unemployment benefits. So this is another way of where we'll see the state playing into the federal dollars. So while the CARES Act designated a certain amount of money to be dispersed in a variety of ways, whether it be directly by the SBA, whether it be using the bank as a middleman, they have also, for the first time in history, allowed unemployment benefits to be given to LLCs, people that might not be payrolling themselves, doing 1099s, independent contractors, and this will override whatever current state law is currently in place, because many places, I know, such as Florida, in the past did not allow gig workers and so forth to apply for unemployment. So that's a temporary program, and it'll be state administered but federally funded. So those funds will trickle down further, meaning that you have to still apply through your state's unemployment benefit programs. The nice part about that is that it adds an additional $600 per week from the federal government on top of whatever unemployment compensation your state provides until July 31st. So they are giving some additional federal funds on top of whatever state unemployment funding law you have. So the state unemployment funding law will not change for people, but it will be offered and extended. Currently, most states offer 26 weeks of unemployment benefits, which is about 6 months. And under the new program, if you've not found work by the time your state unemployment benefits run out, you'll receive an additional 13 weeks of federal unemployment benefits, which will then mirror whatever the state was providing you to begin with. So there's no real additional forms there needed for the federal benefits to happen on top of your state benefits. So if you apply and you're approved for those state unemployment benefits, you'll receive the federal dollars automatically, and this program will be effective through December 21st. So I think this is another thing for people to really look at. While it's still not addressing the overall problem, it is a Band-Aid being provided under the CARES Act.
And so this is for, or this will be extended to these solo entrepreneurs, non-employee sort of firm operators?
That is correct. And they'll just have to basically prove that their last several paychecks were based on their solo contract work. And that can be in their state submission process. And a lot of states have actually expedited their process and are continuing to try to do so, as this is an evolving situation, and have waived the usual 1-week period for that first unemployment check, along with the requirement that applicants are actively looking for work, because many are aware that this is an entirely different realm and you might not have experience in the areas that are hiring right now. So the regulations have lessened in every state except for California and Indiana. They're still requiring that you must certify you are able and willing to work.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of money, this is coming from under this CARES Act, the federal government. Where is this money coming from? I mean, COVID-19 hits, bam, $2 trillion available for small businesses, throughout the U.S. I mean, I'm sure, a lot of us would think like, man, I wish this was available, last year or when I started or whatever. But we know money doesn't come out of thin air. But where does this $2 trillion come from in our country's resources?
So, I mean, like any stimulus package or any resource package, it comes out of our federal budget and from the Federal Reserve, and it has to be allocated specifically. And I think that's a lot of what the tie-up within Congress becomes, and people really getting into the nitty-gritty of where this money goes. So when we were speaking about one just on a congressional level of funding, the states are also going to play a part in where this money goes once it gets here, because the way that the CARES Act is drafted, it provides $150 billion for state, local, and tribal governments to cover the cost incurred between March 1st, 2020 and December 30th, 2020 due to COVID-19. However, the portion of funds distributed to each state is based on the total population of the state. And then the state won't receive their allocation. They'll either get it directly on or slightly before April 26, 2020. So there's a lot of different layers here of really finding the funds and then appropriating them in the right way.
So this $150 billion, this is what the states are getting to fund their relief programs?
That is correct, yes. And that will be divided between the states based on the state's population. So obviously states like that are more dense will receive a different amount of funding than states that are sparse in population.
Huh. That's interesting, because I would imagine it could almost, I mean, maybe we don't have time to analyze it, but the different states have different sectors that are more popular than others. I mean, it's like some of your northern states. Not saying that, I mean, yeah, we have the same professions in every state, but, there aren't as many probably farmers in one state than there are another state. And I know this all would factor into what type of businesses are asking for what type of claims, based on the industry. Certain businesses would, of course, be allocated more because if they do a larger volume, of work or what so have you. So it'll be very interesting. And also another thing that I'm kind of hearing is, I mean, this $150 billion is a limited cap. Um, what if this doesn't cover it? What if the states need more? Where are we then?
Right. So it more than likely will not cover it, and especially depending on the industries that the state really thrives in. Like you mentioned, farming versus people owning commercial banking industries. I mean, they're completely different costs associated, manufacturing plants, completely different costs associated. So I think it's very extremely important for these businesses to be working closely with their local officials, because if the state budget doesn't have any extra funding, which hopefully some of them do and are not in a deficit, now is the time to really be reaching out to your congressional elected officials, because as of this week, they're already beginning to discuss their next legislative steps. And while they don't come back in to take an official vote on an additional CARES Act, which they've discussed doing as well, they're talking about doing an interim bill, which would really be considered as soon as April 8th and would provide an additional $250 billion. And that is only under the PPPs for this interim bill, which I think it's important for these small businesses and entrepreneurs and individual entities to make a voice saying, one, they need to be included in that, but they certainly need to be included in the CARES Act too, which will be bound to happen within the next couple of weeks. I mean, this is crucial to getting our elected officials heard, just both on the state and federal relief efforts, because if we're not voicing a demand and a need, it's not going to be heard. So I think really just beginning to reach out and have those conversations, whether it's on social media, tagging your elected officials politely. I always like to tell everybody, please politely explain your situation.
Right.
You get a lot more bees with honey. And also picking up the phone, calling, emailing them. I mean, the more that they know their constituents need something, and this is even on a municipality level, but this goes all the way up to a federal level as well, they will be more apt to do something because they also know their constituents are the ones that vote and keep them in office. So they certainly don't want to alienate or turn away a huge amount of their voter base.
Okay. So you definitely have sort of have guided, you're helping me to understand as a small business owner how to, I guess, involve myself with in this governmental process. And I mean, and that's essentially my out of this, my question for you is, how do we, as small business owners, what do we do? And I mean, you just answered that. So I'm just sort of speaking to the clarity that you've given for myself as a small business owner. Like, for instance, yesterday, as you're guiding us, yesterday I spoke with the city council president for Baltimore City, and he's introducing some legislative proposals to make some money available on the local level for Baltimore City, tapping into the rainy day fund that they have for Baltimore City. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is, us as small business owners who may not have a lot of relationships or may not previously have been politically involved, outside of voting. Now is the time to, start voicing ourselves, to kind of raise our voice and make more or give more input to our elected officials about what can help us as small business owners. I mean, you have anything that sort of echo from there?
Yeah, I mean, you said it well. And if we don't give our voice now, and if other small businesses, entrepreneurs don't give our voice now, we're going to be overlooked in the state funding and the secondary funding for the CARES Act or any other stimulus package funding, because we can't just assume that somebody else is giving a voice to our personal concerns. And so I think it's really up to us to, whether it's comfortable for small businesses or not, express exactly just what that need is and why in a very succinct way. And our elected officials are trying to work on our behalfs, and we just have to make it known.
Great. Anything else that you feel we should know as small business owners, during this COVID-19 challenge? I mean, your strength, what you're able to do, your profession, your gift of managing, creating, and crafting these relationships with small businesses as well as with government. I mean, what are our marching orders as small business owners? Give me two things that I should do tonight or tomorrow as a small business owner that is facing some financial difficulty because of COVID-19.
So I'll start with reminding everybody that there's strength in numbers. Remember, you're not in this alone. I think now is a great time for the small business community to really come together and start a network where we can help support and uplift each other. And as far as action items go, my first one would be to pick up the phone, find the email for your state, not just legislative elected official, but your governor as well. Politely tell him what you're going through as a small business owner, the name of your business, your entity. And then my second thing would be to call your elected official on a federal level, because they're the ones really distributing the mass amount of funds. But both of those are very important as two-part action items. And your state government website will have basically, many of them have a search where you can type in your address. It'll tell you exactly who your elected official is on a state level and how to contact them. And then similar to your senators and congressional leaders on a federal level as well. So if you just type in "who is my elected official" into Google, that is a very, very easy way to find a numerous amount of sites that'll drive you right to who those people are, and it'll give you their phone number and their email address. And right now, email, obviously everybody's teleworking. Email is a great way to go, and it's a little easier to get your point across sometimes too, but it doesn't hurt to do both as far as emailing and trying to make that phone call, because staff is still on hand and they are still routing phone calls to the appropriate places from a safe distance.
Great idea. I'm going to do it. And, I want to encourage other small business owners across this nation to really take heed to the advice that Therese Hessler has provided us this evening. And we're going to continue to navigate through this storm. This is what we do, entrepreneurs. We embrace, we adapt, we adjust, we innovate. And this is a challenge, but not a challenge that we can't overcome. So just want to, again, thank you, Therese Hessler, for coming on and sharing your insight. And just remind people, of your company and your website so that folks can reach out to you if they need your help in this area.
Sure. So once again, it was a pleasure, and thank you for having me. My company is Ashlar Government Relations, and my website is Ashlar. It's ASHLARGR.com.
And I want to, again, just keep everybody encouraged, just keep moving forward, and we're going to navigate through this together as a community. I am Munir Bahar, the nonprofit warrior, principal consulting for Core Consulting LLC. Thank you, and keep pushing forward.